And what is this new law going to bring in the fight against sexual violence? To know more about this, we're now connected with a commissioner at the National Commission on Anti-Violence Against Women, or Komnas Perempuan, Ibu Theresia Iswarini. Good morning, Bu Rini.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kai and Paul, yeah?
Yes, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us this morning. I mean, I wanted to say my big congratulations because I know you must have been there in the spot, weren't you, when when it was finally made official.
Well, actually, congratulations also should go to the victim or survivor who actually really eager to have this bill or law. And also goes to Parliament, also goes to the government who are really intensive actually and productive in presents this law. Also goes to civil society and also media. Absolutely. Because I think media has a very strong contribution to really encourage the Parliament and also government to discuss and also to enact this law.
Well, especially in raising awareness. But speaking of, could you please give us a run-through of what are exactly the key elements of this new sexual violence law?
Well, we've seen actually the 6 key elements as a comprehensive approach that actually have been reflected in the law. If we look at the 6 elements, it consists of 9 forms or 9 kind of sexual violence. Also sentencing, also talking about the process of what we call law process or legal process for the victim to report, to accuse, and also to have a trial in the court. And also talking about the investigation, also talking about the recovery, because this is very important. Recovery meaning remedies not only for the victim, but also for their family and the witnesses. And prevention, also talking about the coordination between all the parties who handle the case of violence against women or sexual violence.
Now, we do know, Bu Rini, that this law is set to be more focused on helping victims of sexual violence. Earlier, we mentioned Chapter 67 of this law. Can you explain a little bit more about Chapter 67 and how it entails to protecting the victim's rights?
Let me check the 67, because I need to look at the draft. We are talking about the victim rights. In that in that article, talking about right to handling, right to protect, and right to recovery or remedy. And this is a state obligation, mandatory for the state to provide all the what we call integrated services for a victim or survivor to proceed their case. So it means that the state should provide all the facilities, should provide all the services, should provide also the budget for the services. In the process of Article 96, actually we also have 98 article. Talking about the right to information, because it is important for a survivor or victims to understand the process of the case, also understand that perhaps she also will get what we call restitution, meaning that all the operational costs will be handled by the state. Also right to legal services, right to health services, right to services and facilities for the disability person, and also right to be forgotten, because in our law, sexual violence law, actually talking also about the electronic-based sexual violence. We know that one case or one picture of us put in the social media, in the Google, for example, or Facebook, or Twitter, or every social media, it will be there for the rest of life.
Correct.
So it is important for the state to also take into the consideration the right to be forgotten and give the process for the Kominfo, for example, to take down all the picture or information not relevant, irrelevant information in the electronic base.
That's actually a good point. I
Yeah.
never actually thought that far of it, but yeah.
That's one of
Yeah,
the
that's a breakthrough, actually.
Yeah, I think that's the newest part and most progressive one because of the state that we're, the state of technological development that has been going on really, really quickly. But I just have one question because you mentioned the processes, right? And you mentioned that all these victims will have the rights for process, will have the right to not be rejected for their cases to be investigated. But my question is now, is there a clear information, for instance, for victims to know what they have to prepare before they present their case to the authorities and officials to not be rejected? Has there already been an implementation plan set, or is that still in discussion?
Well, actually, this information should be provided in the first place, yeah? For example, when the victims report to the police should provide all the process since the investigation process, to the accusation process, to the trial process. And also provide the information that victim can be protected by some regulation, actually internal regulation, since, for example, the attorney should follow what we call Pedoman number 1. There is a guideline manual, for the attorney not to harmful the victim, for example, as well as the court, the judge cannot do a harmful process to the victim. They cannot state what we call masculine or gender bias statements when they provide the question to the victim or to the survivor. So that's also regulated in Perma. There is Peraturan Mahkamah Agung, the Supreme Court regulation, that's internal regulation to for the judge, not to expose the statement, gender bias statements during the process of trial.
Just quickly to follow up, that is during once it's already been processed to trial. But the reason why there is so little, cases being reported is out of fear of rejection in the first phase, like of the victim coming to the police to investigate the actual case. Is there a state of what kind of evidence that the victims have for the police authorities to be able to take these cases seriously? Because, or else anybody can come up to the police and say, "I've just been sexually harassed. You have to take me seriously." What is the key take to filter these cases?
Yeah, this is something what I call a lack of legal evidence. Sometimes the evidence it's not really appropriate provided by the victims because one, the victim itself still traumatized due to the sexual violence. The uniqueness of this sexual violence because one, probably the victims can be freezed. She cannot do anything. She just quiet, or she blame herself and directly, take a shower, and that make the evidence gone. Yeah,
I see.
that's one. And second, sometimes the delay of coming to the police and get what we call visum et repertum also too late. And also because the police officer do not really appropriately provide the information, the urgency of visum et repertum. Sometimes also the lack of facility, the victim should go to a main city, for example, or the case happen in the island, small island, and the victim should go to the main island. This is something that also take into consideration because the visum et repertum should be taken in the recommended hospital or institution recommended by the office, by the police officer, yeah, or by the police office. The legal evidence can be also lacking because of the not understanding of victims to the legal evidence itself. Yeah, this is something that we need to socialize the law of sexual violence, the criminal procedure code, because that's our what we call the main code for victim and also for officers to coming up their case to the court. Legal evidence also already regulated in our sexual violence law. And one thing, actually, I can say that as a breakthrough, because now the court and also the police officer can accept what we call electronic recording of the victims. Yeah, sometimes since the traumatized of the case, the victims cannot say anything about sexual violence. So this is important for a police officer to take into the consideration all the recording of the victims and put it as a legal evidence.
Burini, we talked a lot about information, and there is a lot of new information that pertains to this new law. How do we, as just the everyday citizen, how do we know exactly how to use this law to its full effect? For example, there's, let's say we're witness to sexual violence in the workplace or a friend or family member. How are we able to know what the guidelines are in order for us to report this sort of behavior or these sort of incidents? And where can we basically get the proper information in order for us to know what it is that we are to do next?
Yeah, first of all, before I jump into your question, actually,
Sure.
Article 85 of the law regulate that the public can participate in the prevention, assistance, recovery, and monitoring of violence, sexual violence. This is important for the public or for the society, for the community to really put into the consideration every sexual violence they notice in the community. Yeah, when they see there is sexual violence happen, they directly can react to stop that sexual violence. That's one. Okay. Second, if it's already happened and the victim needs help or need assistance to go to the police officer, for example, the community can directly accompany her and help her to report. Okay. This is very important because sometimes, you know, in a very difficult situation, the community sometimes do not want to go to the police because it's really complicated. It takes time, wasting the energy, for example. Sure. So that's the way a community can help the victim. And also during the process, the community, the member of community can also help a victim to report, for example, to Komnas Perempuan or to institution, services institution or provider. There are two kinds, a community-based service provider and a government-based service provider. And the victim or the survivor can be helped by Komnas Perempuan or by service providers to continue the process. Yeah. For example, if a victim needs remedy or recovery or needs psychological assistance, the Komnas Perempuan or the service provider can directly refer to the institution who provide psychological services. Yeah. This is important because sometimes victim cannot, choose or cannot decide what really important for her to take into the next steps. And then also during the process of psychological assistance or services, we also can help her provide information on how to process the legal process, and inform the legal office, police officer, for example, to also cooperate with services or legal institution or service provider, because it is important. We call it as integrated services between police officer and service provider, because sometimes police officer do not want to coordinate, or vice versa. Service provider also do not want to coordinate. So this is now the time for all parties, coordinate, do integrated services only for the benefit or interest of the victim.
So just to clarify, Burini, these services that are provided will all be, costs for all of these will all be covered then?
Well, yes, because according to Article 96, 97,
okay, losing track.
97, victims' right.
Right.
Fulfillment, point 2, fulfillment of victims' right is the state obligation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Meaning that the state should provide also the budget
Okay.
for the victim, for the survivor, including the restitution. Restitution should coming from the perpetrator, facilitated by the state.
All right.
Yeah.
And
but the state should provide the budget for services, psychological services, legal services, and also special services for disability person, for example.
Right. And one more thing. So going back to what you said earlier in regards to us as the community, if we do see a situation helping and we are required and obligated to help, obviously, the law does protect us in our actions then?
For sure, yes, because Article 85 actually already regulated. There are even three points. Public can participate. That's the first point. 2, community participation in prevention. Start from the literacy, meaning socialize the law and regulation. Create environmental condition, prevent the occurrence of sexual violence, and also provide information on incident of violence crime. So this is, I cannot say that guarantee 100% the Article 85 can be implemented well, because it's really depend on how far the information provided by the state and also by us, particularly by media as well. And also because we have different perspective and on how to implement sometimes. And it is the domain of government and also domain of the related ministry to really monitor and ensure that all legal officers, from the police officer to the attorney to the judge, really implement and aware that community, that people, society can participate can participate and guaranteed by Article 85 of the law.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I think you can never have too much information.
Yes, that's so important. I think because the reason why it's been so difficult is because of that lack of information so far. And from us, one last question. Finally, after a decade of waiting, I mean, literally a decade of waiting, since 2012, Burini, the law has been passed, and as you said before, behind the scenes before we started this conversation, is that it's one thing for the law to finally be passed, but we still have to guide the implementation process. So might you share, your expectations on how your hopes and expectations how this law will be implemented, and of course, I see this as an obligation for the government to really protect the victims, because these laws are actually more obligation for integration and ministry obligations. So could this perhaps finally be a drive in a culture change, that could root out sexual violence from our society?
Yeah, we hope, Kay and Mas Paul, we really hope that the system, because this is very what we call driving system, really can change the perspective of government, because the government actually really are obligated to provide the services, really change the perspective of legal officers, really change the perspective of us itself, because sometimes we also blame the victim of sexual violence, and really provide the change for the victim or survivor. I do believe that this is a hope, for the victim or survivor and all Indonesian women actually. When this law happens, when this law exists, when this law can be implemented well, many cases can report it well and handled properly. Not only report, but cannot be handled properly. And also there is recovery and remedy process properly implemented as well. So it means that we need what we call derivative regulation. We need the continuous monitoring from the related institution, because Komnas Perempuan also part of this monitor institution, including government and also some other institution like Komnas HAM and also KPAI, and also LPSK, the Witness Protection Institution. This is very important, and I do believe that we can go work in integrated and also synergy. We can help a survivor in the future.
Gurini, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate this deeper dive into the new laws that have just been enacted, and we wish you nothing but the best, and we do hope that this does indeed make some permanent changes for our future. Take good care. Have yourself a great long weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate media contribution,
Thank you. We appreciate
I do hope that for the next media can also really push the work of government and also civil society and also legal services work together and synergy.
Absolutely. Agreed. Take care, Gurini. We'll talk to you again soon.